Who's the big man?
Morena, welcome. It's 9 o'clock, so let's begin. Let's start with a karakia. Whakataka te ho ke te uru, whakataka te ho ke te tonga, mā taratara ki tai e he ake ana te Dakota, he te, he hoke, he hohu, te he Māori ora. Ka pai. No apologies, as I understand. We could have a mover and a seconder, please. For the, no apologies, sorry. Don't need to move, no apologies. Don't need to move anything then, do we? And no extraordinary business. Any new? Oh, there is extraordinary business. Yeah. And just correspondence? No, yeah. So we have received an email this morning from Mr. Rakovich. So I will take that as an action to discuss that with management post this hui and come back in the next meeting with an answer to that. Mr. Rakovich, we've received correspondence from him, so I'll take that post hui to read that and consider that and work with management on that. Conflicts of interest. I'm not aware of any new conflicts of interest to be disclosed. Which takes us to the minutes.
Madam Chair.
Sorry, Shane.
Me here. That's all right. Morena koutou. Just looking at the correspondence now, and I've only just looked at it, read through it just before the meeting. Mr. Rakovich has asked that he would like the committee to address his concerns and respond to him. So just with in regards to your comment around talking with management, also through the committee as well, I guess we'll be having those conversations to address his concerns.
Yes, yeah, that's right,
Sure.
Shane. And I'll circle back, to the entire committee on the resolution that comes from that. All right, back to the minutes. Can I please have someone please move that they are a true and accurate record? Thank you, Bruce. Second. I think that was Sam online. Thank you. All those in favour? Yeah. Oh, sorry, did you have something, Nicole?
Yes. So, Chairperson's report for that meeting. So, you shared that you'd attended a session run by Audit New Zealand and hosted by Ron Wilmington, and noted that you would share the presentation with members. I might have missed it, but...
No, you haven't missed it, and I'll try and find the link and
Okay,
definitely
thank
send
you.
it. Yep.
So that was matters arising.
Yeah. Yeah, good point, Nicole. Thank you. I'll
No worries.
make sure it's very worthwhile watching. So, okay. Moving on to actions, which we can, I think, are addressed within the actual agenda. So we can address that then. And in terms of references there for information, which then takes us to Chairperson's report. Right, a few things from me for this hui. Firstly, I think I've mentioned in our previous quarterly Audit and Risk Committee that bi-monthly we meet with CORD and the CORD board and it's a mixture of both strategy and operational matters. So operational matters cover things like finance, health and safety, obviously workflow, what the sales pipeline looks like, and then a little bit of strategy. What was really interesting in the last hui we had a couple of weeks ago was a presentation around digital transformation and the use of data. And so, as you can imagine, this was a very topical and really interesting korero, because it was also considering the use of AI and how that's going to support court and delivering and kind of, I guess, getting that competitive advantage and moving as quickly as they can. An example of where they potentially are looking at that now is around, I guess, using data to get more accuracy in their costing. So we could have actually have spent the entire hour just talking about the use of data, AI, transformation. So I know that when they do come to present to full council, which I know is scheduled as a regular event, then we've asked for that to be included also to full council, because really interesting hearing about that. So second thing that I've completed within the quarter, which we'll get to when we come to that agenda item, is my health and safety site visit, which I know has been a great initiative by management to make sure us as governors and the leadership team are now actually out there viewing and seeing, and that kind of visual felt leadership from health and safety. So I'll come to that when we actually get to the health and safety report on what I found and the benefits that I got from it. But thank you for that opportunity, and again, highly endorse that we are all out there completing our duties as officers. So come to that in the next agenda item. And I guess lastly, for my chairperson's update, is a massive thank you to our two outgoing Audit and Risk Committee members, being Shane and Nicole. Have a pause. So I just wanted to, personally thank you very, very much for your valued contribution from both of you. I've found that we've almost been on a learning journey from me, probably 5-6 years ago, as a new governor in the LGNZ space. Shane, especially, I know that when you came on from the thought leadership, the questioning, and where you've come to in the last couple of years around just such a great contribution, and the quality of your questions that have come through, I've really appreciated. And Nicole, I've always tried to encourage you to keep asking those really good questions, because they are always on point. I know you sometimes think that, is that a valid question? But for me, it's they are always really, really good questions. And I think we've complemented each other around our skill sets. So I know in that consenting and compliance and water space, it's definitely not my skill set. So highly thankful for your contribution, and also guiding me through the correct protocols of chairing, which even making me a bit nervous having Mr. Lemon in the room, kind of go, gosh, she's been here 5 years and she's still getting it wrong. So anyway, thank you both. As I say, amazing contribution, and all the best for the future. I do hope that you use those governance skills going forward, because you're both very, very good at it. So thank you. Thank you for your contribution. So that was all from me from my report. But Shane, comments?
Yeah, I'm happy to move your report, Annalisa. And as this is the final audit and risk meeting, I also mihi to you, kei te mihi, e te rangatira, for your chairpersonship and the contribution that you've made, the value that you've brought to this council, to me personally, having through your leadership learnt a lot. There's two things that I'll take away. One of them is don't take things as read. Please read the report. Please present the report. And the other one is bow ties. But yes, definitely, those that have contributed to audit and risk over the last 6 years, it has been an incredible journey to where we are today with your contribution. And also, I see Murray Lemon in there in the room too. So quite a fitting last meeting. Thank you very much for your service. Kia ora.
And I second Shane's comments. Thank you, Annalisa, for chairing our meetings, and good luck going into the future. And same with you, Bruce. Interesting times. Anyway.
Bruce? All those in favour? Right. All right, Executive Director's report.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, councillors and committee members. Just a bit of an update on the work that the team have been doing, and I think if you look at the summary of the agenda, there's been a lot of work in this space, especially around that risk area, and we're going to dig into that conversation this morning. But just want to touch on a couple of points from my report. Firstly, and as you've touched on, Madam Chair, that the approach around working on our officer due diligence from a health, safety and wellbeing point of view is continuing. We've shared a little bit of an update on the prosecution, and certainly, hopefully you're starting to see that the way in which we're reporting our health, safety and wellbeing data and the way we're engaging both our officers at a management level and officers at a governance level is giving really good evidence base to show how we're testing work as imagined versus work as done. And we really appreciate the efforts of our governors getting out there with our teams and seeing the work on the ground. I think these relates to the 5 points around what the Audit and Risk Committee will continue to receive from council staff around our obligations under the Health and Safety at Work Act. Certainly our efforts around monitoring and continuing to improve our confidence around our critical risks, ensuring that those controls are in place. And again, that's a theme that you'll see today through our strategic and operational risks. The work that John and his team are undertaking now around key accountabilities, roles and responsibilities, and that is part of our health, safety and wellbeing strategy that we've just commenced work on. And in terms of the orientation for our new council, the support that we're going to put around our new councillors, around good governance practice, and especially around a focus on health, safety and wellbeing. So we're looking at how we induct and orient our new councillors to that function. The way in which we're bringing through our internal audit and risk program, our internal reviews and a summary of where we're at with those, including in the health, safety and wellbeing space in particular, the summary of what we're doing once we see these critical incidents occur and how we're closing those out and how we're learning from those. And this morning again was a bit of a good example of this building here trialling a system, a critical health, safety and wellbeing system in managing aggressive customers. And finally, just our ongoing commitment to supporting governors getting out there and fulfilling their obligations around the functions of an officer under the Act. I touch a little bit further on the walkarounds, and I won't labour that too much. We've got a health, safety and wellbeing report that we can drill into a little bit more around your observations and experiences. Just to, from an annual report perspective, switching tacks a little, our aim as a council is to adopt our annual report before the 31st of October, and the team are working really hard at the moment to ensure that we are getting all of the material in place for Audit New Zealand to come in September and undertake their audit. That means for the Audit and Risk Committee, and so it may not be our councillors' last meeting. Oh no, it will be, sorry. We do actually have to have an extraordinary meeting the week commencing the 27th of October, and that is to endorse the annual report for council. So that's the time frame we're currently working to at the moment. So just a note for the calendars for Bruce and for you, Madam Chair. The next item of business, and there is a recommendation for you to consider in my report, which is to adopt the work program for 25-26. You'll recall this time last year we adopted that work program, and we've made a few amendments. We've shifted a few bits of information around to ensure that you're getting the right level of information, and so hopefully we've learnt from the previous year's experience, and that you can see that work continuing to reinforce your terms of reference. And then we've just got a bit of an update on our people stats and what some of the key things our team are underway. The holiday pay remediation project is well underway now, and we're making a significant number of payments, and that is progressing well. And probably last point is our head of people, Kylie Hansen, is also developing a people strategy, which will talk about the range of things that this council will do to ensure that this is alongside a health, safety and wellbeing strategy, a great place to work for our staff. So happy with that summary, just to take any questions.
Questions, comments?
It's a comment actually, because I found that case very interesting to read, and particularly sort of reinforcing how you're talking about us doing our walkarounds and stuff like that, the whole thing about work as planned or imagined versus work as done, which I found really interesting, that they can't, someone who is leading the organisation can't rely on their people that work for them to give that information. They actually have to know themselves, which is quite quite important thing to realise. So thank you for sharing that with us. I read the whole thing, and quite enjoyed. It sounds bad, but I enjoyed reading it. Thank you.
Couple of things, Chair, just in relation to your comment, Steve, on the week of, I'll get it on the table early, the week of the 27th of October. The only day I've got for you is the 27th. So let's do it on that Monday, shall we? Can we lock that in earlier rather than later?
Will do.
Otherwise, I won't be able to give you any time, and that may prove frustrating.
Noted. Obviously, we've got to await our new council as well. So, but I think our team will have taken that date down.
If we could
getting
do
nods.
That, yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you, because it may take a little time, Annalise, so I wouldn't mind leaving sort of 2 or 3 hours for that, if we could. Okay, and just in relation to the court cases, I think I've traversed this about 5 times with different boards and had different outcomes on each one. One of the key themes, though, seems to be is that, and it's probably worth noting, is that the prosecution went after the chief executive, but they could have just as easily gone after the board, but they didn't. So it doesn't mean to say that some of the commentary that turned up in here is the absolute truth. I don't know whether or not how we document that, but the reality of it is that there would seem to be an element of personal, because Gibson had been so vocal about things in the past. So the board could have just as easily been held accountable. It's just that the judge didn't have the capacity to reflect on it because there was nothing presented. So don't allow this to give you some comfort at governance level that you don't have the same responsibilities. I think it's on all of us to be equally as curious and equally as responsible, and give the chief executive as much help as possible. The other thing is, one of the key things here is that the new Act will give us some level of clarity, but don't overcomplicate it with a compliance response. It's a cultural response required, which is what we celebrate. So it's actually, the problem you're going to have is that this could potentially put us in a position where everybody tries to regulate themselves out of the conversation without emphasising what we should down to the nth level. And those that are in charge of your operating units are going to get almost distressed by response as opposed to doing the right thing. And you start to see people then not ignoring but trying to fish through it. So it's really quite an important, it's an interesting case and it's an interesting response, but I don't think it talks as much to what we should be doing as the new Act and what you're currently doing. And that's what you're celebrating. Everyone goes home safe and we keep our people safe, and we will actually sacrifice time around response and things like that as opposed to make sure that happens. That's all. So it has been interesting though. This is once again a good summary, no doubt, from Business Leaders Health and Safety Forum. But I've heard different things from different people. You talk to a legal team, they give a different perspective. Okay.
Sam?
No. Oh, he's on there.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just going to talk about the
Steve's saying as
dates and the timings for the new meetings as well, because that date that Bruce has suggested, I think, is Labour Day. And we've got the new council dates to get in and approve with the new council. So I was just interested in how that week was going to play out, if there'd been any thought. Are we going to have an audit and risk meeting the day before a council meeting to have that all approved?
Yeah, Sam, at the moment, that's our intent. Obviously, the timing of the elections and the first big milestone to adopt the annual report before the 31st of October is one of those deadlines we're trying to get in front of, and it's certainly something that we're working really hard to try and achieve. So that'll be part of our first up briefing for the new council coming in, and when they set their dates, they'll have that context, and we're hoping that we can achieve that date. But availability is availability, and we'll work with the council and the new members once they are in place.
The actual... Yeah, but the hui should only take an hour. Obviously, reviewing the annual report is going to take, a half a day of reviewing it. But the actual hui to adopt it or endorse it should only be an hour. So we just kind of need to work to timelines. But we can take it offline and try and get a couple of options in there.
If I can get it on the week of the 20th to do, even in draft, to work through it.
Even if it's a draft.
Yeah, if we can work through a draft that week, that would be beneficial, so that by the time we get round to actually formally adopting the accounts, it may well be we can do it online. I'll have to do it online because I won't be in town.
We can work with Alison on
Okay.
if we can get an early draft, that might help the timeline.
Yeah.
Shane.
Kia ora tātou. Just adding on to Bruce and what everyone's talking about with the case, it's a clear sign that you can delegate tasks, that you can't divest responsibility. I'm very confident and happy with the approach that council has taken over the past 6 years to immerse councillors in risks by taking them on tours and having their own personal input to developing strategies and supporting staff. And long may that continue. So thanks very much for that reminder, Steve. Thank you very much for the report and the support that you're giving to the staff, especially those that have dealt with aggressive behaviour, which is very sad. I have a question around the work plan, and through a discussion with another councillor, it was raised the asset management plan and where that sits in the work plan going forward. And also we discussed the IT program and where that also sits, but maybe that's further into the report, and apologies if it is. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Shane. Look, might just drill into that a little bit more and pass on to Alison from a finance and performance perspective. Is that within?
Yeah, thanks, Steve. The programme that's in front of you just now is in draft. We can look at whether that is fit for purpose or whether we need to include or vary the report depending on what the needs are.
Thank you, Alison.
Thank you. Couple of things from me. Endorse other korero from the health and safety case. For me, I think that the term that stood out was, you cannot rely on others. There's a lot of really good feedback from that case, but, as a summary, we cannot rely on others. We need to see it and we need to ask questions. So on our site visits, and I'm sure we are when we are doing our walkabout, it's actually engaging with the workers. And I know we've got a very experienced and competent health and safety team and leadership team. So it's just making sure that we do engage with the workers, we do ask the right questions, and then even better, we go into Vault and we actually confirm the conversations that we've actually held, to actually evidence the fact that we've had those conversations. So, yeah, as you said, Bruce, really good summary. The work program, for me, I always, kind of beat my drum, isn't it? We always go back to the terms of reference. If we're happy with the terms of reference, then there needs to be alignment to this work plan. I guess in the last few hui, we have seen a few things sneaking into the Audit and Risk Committee. So we just need to make sure we keep to the scope of the terms of reference. I guess where things are coming into the Audit and Risk Committee agenda is where we think there's a relationship to our top 10 risks. And so, we've got a rather large agenda item here around the housing, the building agenda, which comes up. We'll get to that when we come to that. But I think asset management infrastructure, it's always going to be one of our top 10 risks. So I definitely don't want this committee to be silent, I don't want us to be focusing on our hygiene risks and then we're not having the korero, or we're not getting the reporting on what those big risks are, which is technology, which is infrastructure, it is asset management, but it's how do we keep continually improving. I'm kind of looking at Sonia when I say this, but it's not pages and pages of a deep dive of what an asset management subcommittee or internal management steering committee would be doing. Same in the tech space, but it is some kind of summary that shows us and gives us a level of confidence that those risks are being managed. So not necessarily having to have its own category within the work program. I feel it will always come under that strategic risks, because those top 10 strategic risks won't really change too much. They'll change in rating, but actually the nature of what we do around our activity of work means that 8 of the 10 risks will probably always be constant. But when I did the kind of brief reconciliation between the terms of reference and this, I'm comfortable of where it's sitting. So no other comments from me on the work program. So
And Elisa, could I just raise one more thing?
Sorry, Sam. Yep.
It's just that the work program is currently set out reflects the current terms of reference, and the new council may have different terms of reference, and the makeup of the committee might look different depending on the election. So there's going to be at least 8 new councillors. Steve's already talked about induction of the new councillors. The structure of all council committees is going to be something that will be discussed by the new council. And we know the terms of reference changed 3 years ago now for this subcommittee of audit and risk, and it may change again. So just to keep that in mind with those, with the work program, I guess everything that's after the election is an intention and a good start, but there may be some changes post-October.
Yeah. Good thought, Sam. And I guess it will also depend on what other committees are doing as well, to make sure that there's alignment and not overlap. Or if other committees are disestablished, does that mean that this committee has to pick up, more mahi, I guess. So, yeah, good point. It's indicative until new council was established, but because ultimately they approve the terms of reference, which then dictates the work program. Right, if no other questions or comments, can I please have someone move the Executive Director's report? Oh, sorry, Sharon.
I'm showing up as Grant. I'm the prettier version than Grant. I can say that because he's not here. I just wanted to add to that. Obviously, as we mature in terms of the risk management and risk register with the new council going forward, that will also help inform some of the internal audit programme as well.
Yep, absolutely. All right. Someone move and second the executive's report. Thank you, Nicole and Shane. Second. All those in favour? Right, agenda item number 7.
Yeah, so thank you. So I might just lead off with this. So with that, at the last meeting, we had a full committee, and Councillor Dean was the deputy chair. But following that meeting on the 16th, he had resigned and left his office. So that's left a bit of a gap on this committee structure. So this is just a bit of a procedural fill-in of a vacant role. We actually think that the deputy chair is quite an important role, especially going through this cycle at the moment, and we've got some key decisions that need to be made, especially around the annual report and informing the new council. So what we're seeking is to seek this committee to vote in a deputy chair, and to amend the terms of reference to reflect that appointment. And I think, as just been discussed, that doesn't preclude the new council amending the terms of reference and the structure of this committee when they come into office mid-October. But it's just a bit of a sensible move to put in a deputy just in case the chair is unavailable for any reason. So, yeah.
Thank you, Steve. So if I could call for any nominations, please.
So I nominate Bruce. Just on one thing though, because obviously us as members aren't going to be here, definitely not here next year. So is this setting a precedent going forward on then having our appointed members being a chair and deputy? It doesn't bind that next council on this thing. I just wanted to make sure it's clear.
Yeah.
That's clarified.
Yeah.
No, I don't.
Yeah. So I think the new council has the right to reconstitute itself however it wishes to see these functions fulfilled. That could include that they turn the Audit and Risk Committee into a full committee of council.
Okay.
And so that would change the membership structure, and they can decide that within any period of the Atriennium. What we're doing at the moment, though, is just given that there is going to be a bit of a change of guard, that we're recommending that this board appoints a deputy just to cover through this period, just on the basis if the chair isn't available, we've got a go-to second.
No, I understand that. Hence my just questioning because of the situation that the particular situation that we're in at the moment. I think Sam wants to make a comment.
Sam, did you have a question?
Yeah, I'm happy to second Bruce as the deputy chair. I just note that in the paper it says whoever received the most amount of votes. If there's no second nomination for anyone else on the committee, then we don't need to vote on it, and Bruce will be elected unopposed. But Shane and unless you may have other views around who should be the chair, so I don't want to preempt who you may or may not decide to nominate as well. And yeah, just to confirm what Nicole said, it's up to the new council to set up their own subcommittees. But I do think this is a very sensible decision now, given what we know. And Bruce, you're looking forward to your continuation in this role.
As deputy chair, Sam, can't wait. I think it's sort of like, it's a bit like last man standing conversation going on here with Nicole and Shane coming off, and you can't actually chair it, Sam. So looking around, I wonder if there could be someone else that we could nominate. But look, okay. So I'm delighted that I assume this role of deputy chair.
Shane? Did you have your hand up still, Shane? Yeah. I can't actually see whether his mouth is moving. Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. So we have Nicole moving it and Sam seconding it. And all those in favour? Aye. Thank you. Congratulations. It's a tight race. Right. Health and safety update.
Yes, I'll intro this paper whilst John makes his way. Look, again, this is just a summary of the efforts the organisation has put in around health, safety and wellbeing over the last 3 months. Also a couple of lead indicators about how we're continuing to keep ourselves abreast of what's going on, making sure that we're keeping our people safe and also informing our governors on the good work and the challenges that we've got in the current context. Over to you, John.
Thank you, Steve. Madam Chair, members of committee and elected members, I will take the report as read and a brief overview from the Health, Safety and Wellbeing team. In conjunction with the people team, we are in the process of rolling out our strategy engagement plan and looking for the engagement and feedback from across all of our functions so that we can actually shape what our future strategy looks like. And also make sure that it aligns with our future Salon strategy as overall. As previously reported, we are progressing on several foundational pieces of work following recommendations from the HSE Global External Review. This includes a plan review coming early October and a midterm review by their team on the progress we have made to date, and closing out the recommendations for the November audit and risk report. Talking around our walk-around worksite visits, the Leadership Worksite Visits program is providing positive results. There's incredible feedback from both leaders and workers, ensuring a greater understanding of the workers imagined versus workers done. This quarter there's been 4 recorded visits in the vault. We have laid those out in the report and the actions and recommendations from those. To date, training and workshops, we have facilitated a workshop with Lance Burdett and our Marcoms team around advanced communications and coping skills. The Health, Safety and Wellbeing team also facilitating community engagement, call centre safety and situational safety and de-escalation in the field, along with the safety alarm, the blue light response, which you may have been part of this morning. These are to prepare our staff should there be increased aggressive behaviours from the public. We are also rolling out our GIS location of interest layer and awaiting delivery of platform-specific training, which will be made available across all functions. Part of our management system, we're looking at 2 key risks, critical risks. Our first one is driving, and as has proven in late June, there was an unfortunate accident involving 2 of our staff on the way to work. The vehicle was struck on State Highway 1. It sustained substantial damage and the staff members had been taken to hospital. Fortunately, the most serious injury was a concussion to the driver. The feedback from those people involved was that our advanced driver training that we provide to our people saved the driver's life and that of his daughter. We will be using that as a promotion around our safe driving system and our process, and acknowledging that it does work in doing training. Also, aggression and violence towards staff. As we know, there was a council meeting in Chambers in late July. An aggrieved person required a bit of action to leave Chambers. We actually trialled the plan that we had tested a couple of months earlier, and it worked exactly as we had as trained, and very successful resolution for the incident. With our wellbeing part, obviously winter health, we are seeing a rise in seasonal flus, coughs and colds, and still COVID is around in Canterbury. Whilst they are dropping, it may be because people are not reporting due to reluctance to test. Part of our physical wellbeing process, engaging with Work to Ride program that enables employees to purchase bikes, e-bikes and scooters at a discounted rate and no upfront cost, spread over 12 months, and it's in the report about how that works. Also, our fitness passport offers staff and their immediate families discounted access to gyms and sports facilities across New Zealand, including our own facilities within Selwyn. It's cost-free for council, requires minimal administration, and we'll be launching both the Work to Ride and Fitness Passport as part of our physical wellbeing initiative in September. Happy to take any questions around any of that.
Thanks, John. Sharon, did you ever add more commentary to add? Oh no, that's me. Don't worry, that's me.
You're talking to yourself.
I'm talking to myself. Nicole.
Thanks for the report. Just going back to, so the collision, the vehicle accident. How was so it was a truck was hit by another car, I'm not clear on how this worked.
Look, as part of that, from what we understand, we haven't had the report from police, but there was tourists in a camper van overtaking, caused a head-on, and then, from what we understand, the truck hit our vehicle, but our person had taken evasive action to get out of the road, otherwise it would have been a different outcome.
Are you wanting to say? Yeah. Oh.
I'm waiting.
Yeah, thank you, Bruce. I just want to add to that what really came through in the feedback from the staff members is that they'd undertaken the defensive driving course, and that how invaluable that had been. And what was really clear was that he said as the accident was unfolding in front of his eyes, and I know he won't mind me saying this because he told me this direct, the things he remembered was the top tips that the defensive driving course gave of the actions to take, and that was the last thing he remembered doing, was following through in the actions that he had learned. And so from his point of view, he said the defensive driving course is invaluable for all staff members to undertake, and he does credit that with significantly reducing the injuries that he and his passenger received.
Thank you. And I'm pleased to see the work to ride thing is we're now looking at that or implementing that. It was actually something that I brought up with a previous manager about this particular program, so a few years back. So it is good to see that this is actually being actioned across with the organisation. And sorry to hear, and as we know, that the increasing aggressive and appropriate phone calls, emails, and etc. And hopefully, we obviously have measures with trying to keep our staff safe in that regard. Sorry, just flicking through. So, with your events update, April-June 2025, so you talk about an issue with anaphylactic reaction outside of normal business hours, and to actually get the information for that staff member to then be able to contact their family. And I see now there is you've worked out something with that. So just to and that would be a secure enough system. The whole reason that it was with HR, presumably as a security
Privacy, yes.
privacy.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
And we have the process in place now that we understand and everybody understands where that information lies and how to access that easily.
Okay. Thank you. And in that same report, but the next page, I was interested to see about more and more issues with children and with lost children and children needing sanctuary and asking library staff for help, and then also a young child left at the library. Are we seeing an increase in that, in this sort of thing happening? I'm quite concerned, obviously, that unaccompanied younger children, and what sort of age are we talking? Age do we count as being a young child, as opposed to being someone that could quite easily be at the library by themselves?
I might throw to
Yeah, Denise, I'm wondering if, Denise, you might be able to pick that question up. And certainly, so the question around appropriate supervision ages, I know within the pools, Selwyn Aquatic Centre and all of it, we follow the pool safe guidelines, and so if you're under 8, you have to have a supervisor there at all times, and then it's so there's quite clear guidelines there. But in terms of the library, Denise, is there guidance on the age?
That's what I'm wanting clarification.
In terms of the law exists and unaccompanied children, we have a policy around that, and I'm mindful that since I commenced here that this has not been an uncommon occurrence.
Okay.
And we have had extensive dialogue with Oranga Tamariki about when to notify and how to manage, and so we are comfortable that we've got that under control. And so there will be instances where there is a young person or a child who's been dropped off by a parent, and in fact, interestingly enough, that's a very common occurrence at the moment out in Leaston, because of its proximity to the supermarket and the chemist, and actually it's not necessarily problematic by its kind of occurrence, but we are continuing to manage that, and it's not a surprise with the increasing population growth that there will be increases from time to time.
Cool. Thank you for that.
Shane?
Thank you. Thanks, John, for the report, and thank you for all the work that's being undertaken. It's really good to see the level of reporting in the health, safety and well-being, and I guess one of the pillars of a good governance is setting a good culture, and I guess if I reflect in the last 6 years, we're continuing to uphold that. The reporting is excellent and it's very transparent. It is concerning to see that a third of the events that occur, sort of page 51, events where staff had to deal with aggressive or abusive behaviour. And I wonder, I'm trying to reflect back to the last 6 years when I first started, and that's certainly an increase of these particular events, and how we track those moving forward, when they happen, when are they likely, so that as good governors, we I guess potentially can have an influence on reducing and mitigating any harm, especially for staff. But I did just want to commend the journey, the influence and the reporting that's coming through. Sorry, I'm just trying to find the page now. The page, it's not working, is 52, and it's the wellbeing update. It is very transparent, and it's quite, I guess, sensitive information, but it certainly shows the depth and level of care that this council has continued to exude over the staff and the responsibility too. So I just wanted to commend the maturity and evolution of the reporting and so forth. So thank you.
Thanks, Shane. Sharon.
Yeah, thank you, Annalise. I just want to add in and sort of new information to John's report, but I think given that we're moving into the local government elections, what we are also seeing for staff members is some of the abuse taking place outside of the work environment. And out in the public setting. And this is something that we're starting to become acutely aware of. And in terms of, we'll be thinking about tact and approach that we need to take to support staff. And I hope that it is only a temporary shift, because we're in the local government elections, but nonetheless, it is a change that is, not great for staff who come to work to try to do the best that they can every day by their community, to be subject to abuse out on the street and the football grounds and the supermarkets. And we're certainly starting to see a trend of that coming through.
Yeah, thanks, Sharon. A few things from me. Maybe if I can follow up on Sharon's point, I was just mindful of that. And also, when we get to our legal update report later in the agenda around the increase in Lagoima, there is definitely a trend occurring. So mindful of our, wonderful management team that are doing their best. Yes, it's a very political and tricky time, but, all to be mindful of that management are doing their best. So the pressure from external factors, from our ratepayers and our voters, but also from councillors, just to be mindful that, yes, it's a very political time, but, ultimately, I'm sure, every one of Sharon's team are trying to do their best as well to get through normal BAU workload, get through an annual report, and get through the election. So, and then if you also add on top of that the increase in Lagoima that we're getting, just very mindful in my role around that, the mental health of our kaimahi, because ultimately they're trying to do their best, but the external factors are just, it's almost that social cohesion thing. It's just getting tougher and tougher, isn't it? So just something to be mindful over the next couple of months. Other content within the report, I completely agree, Shane, the report is getting, from where we came from 5-6 years ago, it's the content of the report is getting better and better, and allows us as officers to give us a kind of a level of confidence that, we're supporting management and meeting our obligations. A couple of things, John, to consider. I know we've had this korero before, so great, around the site visits, I'll come to my personal site visit. So great, we've got officers going, we've got the senior leadership team going, we've got elected members going. But I do encourage you to give us a KPI. And as under my terms of reference, our collective terms of reference, I will be, strongly encouraging my members of the committee to meet that KPI. And also SLT. So whatever you consider good practice. I know when I've sat on other committees and other governing roles, it's been for a year, and I've been held accountable by the chair to meet my 4 a year. And so I'd encourage you to come up with that KPI for us as Audit and Risk Committee members, and then obviously cascade that down to management as well. And then I'd like to see a report on us. Not a name and shame, but I'd just like to, if I need to encourage others to make sure they meet that KPI, then, but it doesn't sound like we're going to need to, because it sounds like there's been great feedback and, of the value that's providing, so that's great. So my walkabout, as Steve alluded to, I went with Tristan, which was kind of in the compliance team, regulatory team. They deal with obviously compliance and monitoring as kind of BAU, but they also, I guess this is where a kind of alignment to our critical risk, they also deal with complaints. So when neighbours are complaining about something, it's obviously because, a kind of linkage, potentially linkage to one of our critical risks around aggressive behaviour. So my walkabout involved driving to, different locations and getting an understanding of what those complaints could be. So it's really good to do a deep dive into that critical risk and understand some of the key controls that have been put in place, like body cams, like working in pairs, like making sure we understand the breadth and experience of that team. Obviously, Tristan is very, very experienced from where he's come from, but he's got some new young members in his team that are great new team members, but they just don't have the experience. So, he's already thought about, well, obviously we take a risk-based approach to all our visits, and they would never send out a new junior team member by themselves. It's always in a pair. So he gave me a lot of confidence that his experience and his skill and his understanding of his team is great, and obviously how they work together to make sure they mitigate that risk, because it's a hard job. It's a pretty tough job. They're out there every day, all day doing that. So that was a great opportunity for me to do that and really understand that risk, that critical risk. The reporting, our near-miss reporting is still too low, isn't it? I mean, as Shane said, the report looks great, but you do a deep dive and you look at the near-miss reporting for a quarter, for the complexity and the size and the scale of our organisation, it's still not enough, and there will always be, preaching to the converted here, John, but, there'll always be linkage between near-miss reporting and serious harm, if we can get it right and get the lessons learnt. So, again, I encourage you to continually think about initiatives put in place to encourage people to report. It's a good thing to report, because that number is still far too low, right? There's stuff happening. There's near misses happening every day, I don't know, it's just how do we change that cultural piece that people feel incentivised to report stuff. If you can do it, you might be the first council in New Zealand to be able to do it, but just, maybe in the next quarter, think about some initiatives just to continually try and encourage people to report. The EAP data's, I think Shane alluded to this as well, is great, a little bit of insightfulness in there. I always think that EAP usage is actually almost a lead indicator, not a lag indicator. If people are talking and people are asking for help, then that's a good thing. Interesting around the I guess the difference between male and female. I think if there's a higher female, is that a good thing? So now I'm starting to worry about the males. I'm kind of, well, why haven't we? It'd be interesting to understand how many male females we have, Sharon, in our organisation. Is that representative of? Do we have a pocket we need to worry about? Anyway, thoughts for another day, but. Yeah. And the last thing on the health and safety report for me. So blue light this morning. Some good lessons learnt. And some comms back might be that the Audit Risk Committee Chair was standing in the hallway watching staff members coming in and out of supposedly a locked area that perhaps they shouldn't have been, and korero that it was just a test run and we didn't need to worry about it. So. So maybe a lesson learnt that actually it wasn't, they need to be...
Yep. Our lessons learned has identified a number of factors that we'll work on with the team and the blue light team as well.
Yeah. But no, that's all for me on the health and safety report. We'll see it. Sharon, circling back to... Oh, Bruce, sorry.
That's okay, I'm sitting very patiently.
Just yell at me.
A couple of things, guys, and one thing about like a greater level of reporting and a greater level of interrogation creates a greater level of curiosity. So take it as it meant, but I am very concerned that I see within your critical risk status that we've got we're a little behind on lone worker working. The reason why is that lone worker working can weave into a whole lot of other parts of your critical risk: aggressive behaviour, driving, working around water, in unsafe environments. Working alone is inevitable, but keeping them safe, or at least giving them a capacity for us to respond really quickly to them, is, in my view, quite crucial to our people our performance. and our people feeling it. So I probably just wanted to understand how we're accelerating that, because that would be probably, in my view, something that it either comes first or it either comes as a result of what you're doing. But I'd like to see that one go green faster than you're getting there.
Thanks, Bruce. Yep, we're working on that.
And the other one is that just on aggressive behaviour, Sharon and John, I just wonder, how are we performing in relation to our neighbours around that? Are they all experiencing the same levels of increase, or is there something we're doing that, and we've got to ask the hard questions. Is there something we're doing as an organisation that is increasing the tension in the community that is provoking this as well? So, and I don't know whether or not you've got the data on it yet, but I'd like to think that we collect it. When we have a aggressive incident, is it real in relation to some of the things we're doing, or is it as a result of an emotional state of the person? We can't blame it all on the public. We've got to take some level of responsibility. And if we are doing it, can we? Some of it's inevitable because of the growth in the community and the choices we're making, but some of it also could be mitigated through better communication, better consultation, that kind of stuff. So I just want to be clear that not only are we reporting it, we're interrogating it, and we're asking the right questions, because otherwise, so if it is increasing, can we slow it down through better activity, better comms, and then that kind of stuff. So those are the concerns I had when I read this. But as I say, your reporting's getting better, so therefore the questions are becoming more analytical. And I think you guys I'd like to see some report against, and I don't mind, and I'm sure that Sharon doesn't mind and Council doesn't mind, that if we do a bit of navel gazing, we don't congratulate ourselves when we're putting our people, we make a decision at Council which is pushing it down to our frontline staff, and they're the sort of the coalface, and it's hard, they're getting the blame or whatever for whatever decisions are taken. I'd like to know that.
Yeah. Okay. Look, we do some reporting with other district councils, and we have a quarterly catch up with those health and safety members as well. So that's on the agenda for this next catch up. Around what they're seeing. It is very similar around other councils at the moment, and there is a number of reasons why, whether it's central government or a process or policies or just life in general. So we will do that and report that as well.
I guess the point is as well is that reporting against your peers is interesting, but it doesn't excuse, we can outperform them by saying, well, we have lowered the rate because of what we are doing. And I think Council would be really interested to know that the impact of some of the decisions taken if some of the decisions we take do put pressure in the community.
Yep.
Therefore, you could make not different decisions, because we shouldn't lack the courage to make decisions, but you might be able to deliver it differently, Sharon, or something, like this is going to have a high impact. That's where we play that game,
Yep.
Or we protect our people better, especially those alone or something. I don't know, I do have a bit of a problem here, it appears, but with this machine. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, look, just following on to what Bruce has asked, and really good questions, Bruce. I think that anecdotally, talking to the chief executives, there is an uptick around the country, and there has been an uptick for quite some time, and I think it's for a broad variety of reasons. However, we recently undertook a customer service survey that was presented back to Council, and whilst we had a really good response from our customers, and we got some really good feedback with regards to our immediate response, it is pretty clear that we have work to do once the customer is transferred into different parts of the organisation. So asking, what are the things that we can be doing better? Myself and ELT, we are committed to ensuring that there is a good customer service experience, that once a customer comes into the organisation, they get through the first phase, and our front-facing customer service staff provide wonderful feedback and care, and that was quite clear through the results. Once it goes deeper into the organisation, people get lost in the system, and that is a great deal of frustration. And I also have no doubt that sometimes some of customers' frustration comes through feeling lost in the system. So there are some elements of that too, and that's something we're absolutely committed to working on.
Hi, thank you. I have someone move and second the health, safety and wellbeing report, please. Thank you, Nicole. Second, Bruce. All those in favour? Right. Treasury, Neil. Thank you, John.
Kia ora, good morning. Okay, so as at the 30th of June, Council's borrowings total 295 million, with a cash balance of 61.1 million and an undrawn on-call facility of $10 million. The high cash balances were maintained due to more favourable interest rates receivable to the average cost of borrowings. Just to put it into context, the interest receivable ranged over the course of this financial year between 3.3 and 5.55%, whereas our average post-hedging cost ranged between 3.05 and 4.24%. So we actually gained more interest on the cash balances than we were paying. The higher than budgeted cash balance also contributed to the estimated liquidity ratio of 124%, which is higher than the required 110% as per our policy and the LGFA financial covenants. Even though the total borrowings of 295 million were $29 million higher than the LTP forecast, the net debt position of 234 million was still $11 million lower than the LTP forecast of 244, and also well within our debt limits. Any questions on the report?
Bruce.
Yeah, I do. Thanks, Neil. Quick question. Do we have a significant revolving credit line? Do we have one?
We are actually in the process of looking at an additional standby facility through the LGFA.
Yeah.
We have a paper in draft that will go to the following council meeting where we're going to be proposing that.
I guess
just
what
to
I'm,
take the risk of cash balances.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. So, like that, what I'm suggesting, that it will require a closer management of our hedging, and you will need to look at what your rolling average cash retentions are. But you know, given the amount of cash you're holding, even a week either way can make a monetary difference. And my view would be, if it's efficient to hold a line of credit, which is potentially up to 50 or 60 million, you should, so that you can roll it in daily, in and out on a daily basis. That will require quite a bit more concentration and delegation from a CE perspective, Sharon. But there could be an awful lot of money in it, and I think from that perspective, these guys would probably do better if you were running it on a daily, almost like on a treasury desk basis. I was looking to go like 60 mil. I appreciate where you've got to on it. But you're going to start breaching hedge covenants and things like that as well, aren't you? Unless if you're running up at that kind of level as well. And the other comment I had was in relation to your payback matters. We probably should reflect on that policy, because we're outside your payback covenant at the moment. But if you took into account our capacity to realise against that, i.e. sell assets and bits and pieces as well, because I'm assuming you're running it against your operating surplus, not your, you probably want to reflect on what our policy should speak to, because that talks to what we're investing in as well, and what we could potentially do to give you some comfort, give you some relief against that. Otherwise, we're going to have to do something about it pretty quickly, and I don't think you want to do that, because that would just restrict your capacity to do what you're doing at the moment, correct?
Correct. Yeah, and as we've discussed in the previous meeting, we'll definitely like to work with this committee in reviewing our current treasury management policy to be more fit for purpose.
Well, it's pretty dynamic given the fact that you've got quite a lot of cash flopping around, and also, quite high demands on growth. So my view would be is you need all the tools you can have to manage effectively. If you can benefit yourself with these sorts of numbers by a couple of mil a year, just by being really efficient about how you place and remove and replace your cash, I think the team would appreciate it, because those are big numbers.
Alison, did you want to add on to that?
Yeah, I was just going to jump in there just with regards to the Treasury policy. So I think Neil and myself have noted in the past that our policy is quite conservative in nature. So we're sitting at a 220% debt limit, LGFA 280, 350 for high growth councils. We increased ours from 160 from the previous year, but that is primarily the driver for these payback ratios. So it's our own overly conservative policy that, as Neil alludes to, it does need to be reviewed.
So speaking at the moment as a governance group, we should be requiring you to act against it, and I don't think we want to. So I guess you're looking at it saying, let's get this right, so that we don't actually sit here and say, well, you're out of covenants, fix it.
If I may also add, due to the high balance, we are managing it on a daily basis, and we also need to consider the fact that at year end you usually do see a bit of a hockey stick effect in terms of capital claims coming in, as we, all the contractors try to get their claims in, and we did see that, and so a lot of that cash was actually spent on capital claims payable in the month of July. So there was a lot of methodology and thought behind holding this cash balance just to. You can imagine a revolving credit facility may give you the capacity to manage that,
and then draw down. So you're not restricted in terms of how you hold it, especially if the interest rates go against you from a deposit rate perspective, right? I appreciate that, at the moment it's in our favour, but that's not the norm normally. Normally your debt's a higher cost than your investment rate.
Sam?
Thank you. Yeah, my questions were around the payback ratio piece. Is there some approval? What's the mechanism to be operating outside of the policy? And is that something that's delegated to staff? And Sharon, through your delegations, that has happened, or is today? Feel like we've just been made aware of this. Where does this fit as far as escalation of operation outside of policy?
So the payback ratio was set as part of the LTP and the financial policy. So the LTP states that, I think from memory, it will be compliant again in the 27-28 financial year. So the breach was adopted as part of the LTP.
So today is really just that reporting that what we'd expected to happen is happening, and we need to do the work that Bruce is talking about to update the policy in general.
So the payback ratio, is not completely related to the standby facilities.
I might just add my one point in here on the payback period. Pretty brave to put a comment in a report that says we're in breach of our treasury policy, and don't worry, we'll get it all sorted in 2-3 years' time. So from a process perspective, I know that Bruce has taken a view of the risk-based approach, right? Which is actually, there's no real risk there because we've got options. But just from a good governance, good process, our obligations as Audit and Risk Committee members, don't put a comment in a report that says we're in breach of Treasury policy and we'll sort it out in 2-3 years' time. Either fix the policy or tell us what the delegation is that, or the process is, and maybe you've probably already done that. What has the, I learned to Sam's comment, what's the process? What's the delegation? We're in breach of policy. What's the escalation, the immediate escalation activity that's happened? That obviously you've had correspondence with the Chief Executive to get approval. Something has happened rather than kind of casually putting it in a Audit and Risk Committee when we only meet on a quarterly basis. I mean, we've understood that their risk is not a significant risk from Bruce's commentary, but when we read that as a standalone comment, so maybe just lessons learnt for the future, and then
And Elisa, I'm just going to jump in here. So, I mean, there is a clear action that we need to address our Treasury policy. It was noted, as Neil said, by Audit New Zealand, and it has been noted previously in these reports as well. I'm not accepting that is right, but we will take the action to address the Treasury policy and also look at that revolving credit facility. I think there's an aspect of the maturity of the organisation here just around our forecasting and working with the teams around when payment claims come through, so we're not having to hold on to large sums of cash and make sure that payment claims are coming through on a timely basis. But I mean, Bruce and I chatted just before the meeting just on the revolving credit facility, and that is something we will be working on with PwC, who are our advisors, but certainly the action will be to remedy our Treasury policy and to remove the breach.
that's great. And I don't doubt it's probably a comms thing right now. It's kind of like with the report, rather than just putting the statement in there, a few more paragraphs on what you've done or may not have raised the alarm bells. So
Just to be clear here, Chair, I'm not suggesting that I've got a good handle on the risk, but from an intuitively carrying the kind of levels of debt that we've got, plus the 60 million cash, even though we may use a bit of it, the size of the organisation can, through, if we had to, and I'm talking about looking at it from if we had to sort this out tomorrow kind of conversation, what plans would we put in place? There are assets that we could realise and cash we can realise that will mitigate it so that we're not putting ourselves in a position where we're debt stressed. That's why I say, well, look, I'm not that concerned about it, but we do need to continue to test what's real here. And because if 9 times is all we can handle, because there's no other way out of it over 9 times, then I would be concerned. The work I did was just intuitive. So I'll give you comfort, but I'm not. But you guys need to get it in a position where it's manageable from your perspective. If you were managing the debt and saying, what can I do about getting us out, which is always the question you ask yourself, what's the way out of this? I know that we've got assets which we could then realise against it, like, for example, Cord, Orion, those sorts of things. But I wouldn't, those are buttons we push when we're distressed, not annually, So I look at it and say, comfortable, and also it's not given the assets we've got, they're not significant, right? I know it sounds very flippant when you say $290 million worth of debt. It's not significant. It's not significant in terms of who we are and what we are, but still, you want to get your Treasury policy right so that you guys have the capacity to consider all things, and then you'll know from your own perspective, your CFO and yourself will know where you're going to put yourself at risk, because we've got no capacity to get out quickly, that sort of thing. And if you don't, then you do need to have that documented and covenanted by council and us. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Hi.
Shane?
Kia ora. Thanks very much. As Chair of the Finance Performance Committee, looking at the Treasury report, it's interesting. I'm taking a lot of learnings from all of the technical conversations that's been happening, and I'm trying to convert that into a layman's terms, of which I am. Thank you, Neil, for the report. It's good to see the rigour being put into what is essentially ratepayers' money, and if we consider
as Grant Miller always says, every single dollar is a prisoner. I'm appreciative of your first explanation around holding that amount of cash, and that it was performing better in that as cash. And then, as Bruce has put forward, there are potentially better ways, there is better ways of managing that moving forward. The liquidity ratio, you've covered that. I have a question around borrowings, where we're tracking $29 million higher, and I guess then why borrow that much when we had cash on hand, and whether there was a delegation, or whether there was a delegation issue. But what the breach says to me, when we've highlighted that over and over, is that the policy is in need of review, and I can understand why, given the huge amount of growth, the lift in levels, and I guess, while not necessarily related to this report, I presume that a lot of work in the background is going on into what will be the future of the WSCCO, because that will be of significant material influence on Treasury.
To answer the first question, we did look at early settlement fees. So we did not borrow more to hold the cash balances. Those borrowings were fixed papers. So we actually had to pay earlier, and there would be breakage fees. So we did look at the cost of early settlement versus the interest receivable. So we had to look at our cash flow forecast requirements as well as early repayment of borrowings, and it was more financially profitable for council and the ratepayers to not repay early.
Thank you.
Just a layman's term, Shane, that means we've got lots of fixed borrowings plus our hedges as well. We're pretty pregnant, so breaking them would be a problem.
Sam.
A revolving credit facility will be useful going forward, but you can't immediately activate it because some of the hedges will become ineffective. So it does mean that you guys will have to re-look at your hedge policy as well to be able to use a revolving credit facility effectively. Okay, so it won't be something we can put in place today and get advantage of tomorrow. It'll be going forward how you manage your surplus cash to the effective. So yeah, I think we've probably just got a treasury policy which is probably not as sophisticated as it needs to be for you guys to do your job, you know.
Sam? Tim?
Yeah, thanks. I guess we have policies because it's just for business as usual to allow people to get on with their jobs, and but also operating outside of policy isn't unusual. But I'm not clear what the authorization and checking in on actions has been to get us to this point. And so I'm wondering today, do we need to, is it a council thing? Is it already delegated to staff to be able to do this? And if it's council, then I think the Audit and Risk Committee needs to take a view, and that might need to be part of our recommendation today. And then also we'll need to add to our recommendation today something that includes a review of the Treasury policy and the work plan, which has been part of the discussion. But I just think we should formalise there's a lot of chatter going on about things we'd like to see happen, and maybe we just need to formalise what we're actually asking for here. But I feel like in all this conversation, I'm still not clear as to the process to get to being operating outside of the policy.
Sharon, do you want to answer?
Yeah, thanks, and thanks, Sam. And actually, that's what I've kept flicking my light on and off for about what I'd like to see is Risk and Audit to make some clear recommendations, please. What would be really quite helpful is if Risk and Audit are put a resolution forward that they are supportive of the paper that's going to council seeking the additional revolving credit. I think that's really important. I'm not quite sure I've got my language correct, and I'm sure Alison will think of some far better language, because I think that will be really helpful in terms of.
So my view would be, let's get a paper to us Okay. The only thing I think what we could resolve today is that we acknowledge the payback breach, and we have asked. We suggest that management. We're not a decision-making body, but we suggest that management reflect on the policy, the Treasury policies available to it to more effectively manage payback and cash management, and return with a paper to audit and risk that can go to council. If we acknowledge the payback breach, Annalise, I think we need to give council some comfort that the payback breach is manageable. It was also alluded to in the long-term plan, correct? So it's operating within the bounds of the long-term plan. It is a manageable breach within the capacity of the assets of council, but that the Treasury policy needs to be updated to reflect the mechanisms available to management to mitigate that breach.
Bruce, if
Fair
I
enough.
can just
Are you happy with that?
Yeah, Bruce, if I can just jump in here, and I think sort of feeding from Sam's question, what we will bring back to the next audit and risk is a draft revised Treasury policy. The paper that Neil is alluding to is a new standby facility, so it's not addressing the revolving credit. So for the next audit and risk, we will bring back the Treasury policy, a draft for what a revolving credit facility would look like. That will come back to audit and risk before going to council. And with regards to the breach, and I think it's just worth noting, this is an internal breach and it doesn't impact any of our LGFA borrowing facilities as well. But we'll bring back a separate sort of paper that just talks to that and how we then manage that going forward.
So let's just get this right, because it is a breach that's been acknowledged here that needs to be reported at council. So it's how we do that, and I think it's easy enough to say we've acknowledged that. We recognise. I think, as I said, we recognise the capacity of the business of the council to mitigate that payback breach, and that we want to. So within the, and it is not. That's useful. That is not a breach of the LGFA covenants. It is. It has been noted within the long-term plan, but that we ask that you come back and reflect on it from a policy perspective. Is that kind of where we're going with this?
Yes. Madam Chair, I'm just wondering, because this is quite a technical series of recommendations and we want to get it right, so I'm wondering whether or not you would allow a short adjournment of the meeting so the staff can get together, reflect this discussion, and then bring back some draft recommendations for you to then vote on. Would you be comfortable with that?
We could possibly allow 24 hours and circulate it by electronically if you want to the members, which is basically to, I'd like the opportunity to read it and then...
Yeah, I think there's two parts. There's the recommendation that needs to go to council because we have recognised that we're in breach. And secondly, lifting it up a level, it's what is the escalation and reporting within the actual Treasury policy. So when there is a breach, what's the escalation, what's the delegation, and what's the reporting? Because I think within that policy, Audit and Risk Committee should be, or the Finance Committee should be in there somewhere that talks about that breach. At an even further higher level, I'm kind of looking at Sonia, that I'm sure one of our strategic top 10 risks will be around financial sustainability, breach of LGFA covenants. In our risk management framework, again, we will have, I'm sure we have got it because we only reviewed it last quarter, there'll be an escalation tab in there that says when a risk is about to be realised and it's about to go into extreme, i.e. when we're about to breach our Treasury policy or about to breach our LGFA banking covenants, the escalation is that there's a corridor with the Audit and Risk Committee chair, or there's so that's in our risk management framework.
My intuition on this one, I just want to give some comfort here. My intuition on this one is that we've actually got a policy which is far too restrictive. It's not, the council's not at risk on its debt. it's got a policy which restricts. That's all. That's kind of where I've got to on it. But I don't. It's difficult to do that on the fly. So I'd like to see how we might document that comfort to council, because effectively we're giving it. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Sharon?
Thank you. I'd just like to summarise because there's lots of discussion here. So this is an internal policy breach. It was recognised and it was articulated through the long-term plan that the internal policy breach would occur for a period of time. Notwithstanding that, I absolutely acknowledge as part of our policies, and whilst it was discussed and that was part of the LTP adoption, it is really useful to make sure that our communication reminds what the LTP adoption was, that this is an internal policy breach against the Treasury until such times as the Treasury policy is reviewed. I do accept that the timing around getting a Treasury policy up for review has probably taken a little bit too long, and we do need to have that brought forward. And I think that if that can be, that summary can be articulated for the sake of this set of minutes, please, that would be really helpful. And then in terms of to allow us to be able to move forward, that the committee agree that a set of resolutions will be drafted within the next 24 hours, that the resolutions will be shared amongst the committee for approval, and then added to the minutes, and that will be publicly shared, so to ensure that we are transparent.
And I think, Sharon, what Bruce just alluded to, it's about giving that level of confidence, right? We knew that this breach was coming, was in the plan. And the process. It's about
And
the
it
process,
hasn't
right?
created a financial risk.
No, it
to
hasn't created
Selwyn.
a financial risk.
Okay. But it does. Fit for purpose policies help you guys to manage this, right?
So actually, I had a couple of questions or comments just around the other content of the Treasury report. So, firstly, Neil, thank you for now that you've been beaten up about the payback period. I did recognise for the non-Treasury experts in the room that you've definitely made some effort in explaining the why. So rather than how last Hui, I've kind of said the up and down elevator pitch of things have gone up and down. I definitely noticed at this quarter that you were telling me the why. So thank you for that. This is a technical question from me, and again, you might have to answer, or Bruce might have to give some insight. So I understand the liquidity ratio of debt to liquidity, and we're at 124%, which is compliant with our policy and LGFA. What would be useful is how far, and I might have missed that, but how far are we within the headroom of that? And the second thing was, so I understand what liquidity does, but at a higher level, and I also kind of take it up to the strategic level, what's the ratio that, or is there another ratio that would be useful for me to get a level of confidence that we're not borrowing to keep the lights on? We're not borrowing to maintain our BAU work. Is that debt versus income, or is there another ratio that tells us the quantity of debt that we're taking on is okay for the level of activity and capital projects that we're investing in? Because that number jumps out at you on the first page, and as Bruce said, it's a big number, but then you go, well, actually, it's not a big number when you understand our environment and what we're doing. But every quarter we're taking on more debt. As a non-Treasury expert, how do I get a level of confidence that we're not taking on too much debt for 5 years, 10 years' time? So is there another ratio that would be, and so that was the one I was thinking of, Bruce, is it income versus debt based on the, anyway.
Neil, I'll answer this question first. We can look at the income debt ratio, but also just noting that Deloitte actually done the review of the revenue and financing policy as well from an internal audit stance. So that has talked about what's happened in the past, and they have provided some assurance around our borrowings, around what we're doing now, and our borrowings are linked to our capital programme, so we're not borrowing to keep lights on. But I think what we will do, and we'll take this offline, myself and the team, is build in some other context into the Treasury report that provides that level of assurance that our borrowings are linked to our capital works programme as intended, and what our operating expenditure is, and how we actually fund that through working capital.
You'll be a little bit careful when you're looking at the current ratios, liquidity ratios of the business, because remember, a payment on a capital project that's in the current liability section is actually forms part of your conversations around liquidity and your current ratio and your acidic ratio and things like that. So the best way to look at it is through an effective interrogation of the LTP, the asset management plan, and the anticipated growth in the region. Because in reality, the sustainable growth, i.e. the ratepayers, will pay for the growth through a well-balanced plan, and borrowing should fill it up, but only to the extent that these guys see comfort that over time the rates will actually be able to take us out. We'll be able to take us out of that debt. So that's so I'm not sure, while I appreciate the desire, there are some headline conversations you can have, Alison, but the key here is to just ensure that we're operating in accordance with rate take and a really effective asset management plan and headroom, and good headroom around our borrowing is kind of the way. So how you do that's going to be intriguing, but I don't think there's a ratio you can just go click. That puts us at risk, because if we've got a massive capital program running at the moment and 20% of the bills for that turn up in 1 month, our liquidity rate, our capital asset ratio, our current ratio could look pretty sick in that period, and you will be picking up borrowing to pay that bill or keep the lights on. That's how you allocate it, but I don't think. So just be a bit careful. As long as we're reviewing it with knowledge, then I think we're okay. But yeah, I think it's probably better to have those regular reviews in terms of, are we spending in accordance with our agreed spend profile, and you're not overspending in relation to operational build-up as well, is better from a prudent perspective, and there will be swings and roundabouts. That's why these guys try to hold a little bit of capital, cash headroom, just in case things pile up on you a little bit. Like end of year, as you say, end of year, all the contractors are into you to try and clear it up.
I think we can.
Not sure that helped, Chair, but
no, that does help. And as I think you know, I did definitely identify telling the story of the why this quarter. So thank you. Right, I think we can move the Treasury report. Thank you, Nicole. Seconder. Shane's got his leg up or his hand up. Leg up, showing us his knee. All those in favour? Aye. Aye. All right, risk management.
Thank you. So whilst the team make their way to the top table, I'll just give a bit of a context for this. So this is our regular update that we've been sharing with the Audit and Risk Committee, and it's around our focus on organisation, strategic and operational risk management. As you can see, and we've circulated the paper copies because there's a lot of information in the risk registers that the team have developed. There's been a lot of work undertaken over the last quarter around building alignment and consistency, not only around our understanding of risk appetite, risk tolerance, but also in terms of the controls that we have as an organisation. That work has built quite a lot of understanding within our operational teams about how they're managing risk, and what is the relationship between the inherent risk and then the residual risk once you apply the controls. And today we're bringing back the first draft of that work, and you've got the two tabs there. One is our strategic risks, which is the enterprise-wide level risks, and you've touched on, in the previous conversation, noted that financial sustainability is one of our top strategic risks as an organisation, so appropriate that you spend a lot of time talking about that. And then we've also got our operational risks, which are more driven out of the functional areas of council's business and supporting our community. The end result being that we have and we are seeing a lift in the level of maturity as we get into these discussions, but we're not there yet, and we've still got work to do. And part of sharing these today with you is to let you know the progress that we have made. It is to share with you the steps that we have taken, and to then listen to your feedback on these. The last point I'll make is that with the risk registers, in terms of the residual risk ratings, you'll see that some of the residual risk hasn't actually changed compared to the inherent risk. That is because we're in a process still of confirming that the controls actually are in place and that the controls are actually reducing the risk that we have. And so what you'll expect to see the next time we present this report back to you in November is that you'll see the change in the residual ratings, because we've confirmed that the controls are in place, we've confirmed the controls are working, and then we can then reflect that the changes in the residual risk score are actually something that we can all hold our hand to say, yes, we are doing all of these things, and yes, we're confident we've removed that risk from the inherent down to a residual rating that we're comfortable with. So that's a bit of the context for the work that Sonia has been leading with the team, and both Sonia and Dom are here today now to answer any specific questions. And we've also got one of the requests previously is that we want a bit of a deep dive into how one of these risks is actually managed, and so Matt McGrath, our Chief Digital Officer, will talk to one of the top operational risks and talk about what is the work around the digital space. But yeah, happy to take any questions from here or anything I've missed, team.
I'll say before you start, you've taught him very well. He's talking about design and operating effectiveness of controls. She's done a good job, hasn't she?
I think that was all Steve
Sonia.
himself.
Slow learner, but I'm getting there.
No, thank you very much, Steve and Madam Chair. So yeah, Steve, I think you've done a great job just summarising there. But yeah, we'll try not to get into too much detail on each of the risks. Just want to give you an update on the process there of how we've actually gone about collating these registers. So you had already seen the strategic risks. We've done more work on the controls there and making sure that some of those controls are in place. And then with the operational risks, I've spent a lot of time with heads of departments and team leaders to understand what their risks were. We've also looked at other risk registers in other councils across New Zealand and worked with Deloitte and our external consultant Grant Galloway to make sure that we were covering all relevant risks in our registers, and obviously we will keep these live and work in progress. So these things you'll see changed over the coming months. The risk appetite workshops were led by Grant Galloway to really get those discussions going, and he used surveys to get an understanding of what everyone's appetites were before we met as a group. So some really good techniques there to get that understanding. So his report is also included as part of this this agenda item. So if you have any questions on that, and we'll use his report to really move that risk appetite part of the risk discussion forward and get the risk statements developed in the coming weeks. And then he also was great leading a risk training for for Steve's team, for the strategy, engagement and capability team, and that was really good to get the wide range of people involved there, from senior managers down to well, not down to, but, you know, including all workers in his team, to get an understanding of what they thought of risk, how they dealt with risk, but then also looking at the opportunity side of risk management and how we consider opportunities as we look at risks and in our projects as well. But yeah, happy to take any questions, and thank you.
Sorry. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Sonia. Just quickly, just to get some expectations, my expectations, and I know they're going to be the same as everybody else's, but when I look at a risk register and I'm trying to apply it from a governance and also a management perspective, I like to think that we're working towards clearing, mitigating all of the things that we can manage. So your mitigations should be able to drop your residual risk rating down to a level where you've got most of the things we can manage under control. Then it would be really useful to understand, especially from a strategic and some of your key operational ones, what are the bits we have to accept are unmitigatable or unavoidable. And in finance we call that systematic and unsystematic risk, but you call it avoidable, unavoidable risk, or whatever you want. There could be some opportunities to ensure that, but you probably find insurers are unwilling to take that level of risk until they've done a fairly significant actuarial calculation on it. But that would be my expectation as a result of what you're doing. Your mitigations, therefore, can be lined up against your risk appetite, because obviously risk appetite is basically translate into what we are prepared to spend to mitigate these things, right? So those are the kind of relationships that I think ultimately we'd like to see expressed at governance level. Like, really simply, to mitigate everything down to a level which is unavoidable, we're going to have to do all these things. That will cost us all of this. You've expressed an appetite for carrying a certain level of risk. Therefore, we are prepared to accept a residual risk of X, which is some of the avoidable stuff we'll carry. And if we can express it that way, that's really easy for us and also council to get a handle on it, right? Mm. So when people are talking about it, if you talk about it in that context, it becomes really easy for me to understand it and them to understand it. Mm. Yeah, you understand that you can mitigate all of it, but it comes at a great cost. And some of it's unavoidable. Health and safety, it appears that the appetite for accepting a level of risk in health and safety is minimal. That has a significant cost, that kind of stuff.
Mm. Yeah, and I think that's really great comment. I think that would reflect the next stage of this work, not only as we confirm the mitigations are in place, but we're also aligning it to our appetite and our tolerance for risk as an organisation and in functional areas. And that's the piece of work, I think, when we bring it back, we can tell you that relationship, because at the moment we've just run the appetite and tolerance workshops. We've just done this first stage of bringing it all together in a consistent and an aligned format. We're now ground truthing this and we're getting it sense checked for the right levels.
It's really important that everybody understands what level of unavoidable risk we're taking here. For example, if we were running an army, right, we can mitigate a lot of risk, but we can't avoid a death, because that's the nature of the business we're in, and that's really important for people to understand that, because then they can choose, Jesus, I don't want to be a part of this if that's the case, right? Because that's their own personal view. Hopefully that's not an unavoidable risk of anything we do, but there are some certain, inherently there are things which are more risky, the things we do. I want to know what we can do what can be mitigated, what can't, and then what we have to accept, and I'm pretty sure your councillors will want to understand that in some detail. You know.
Thanks for this. I asked Dom yesterday to send me through the actual risk matrix, so it made more sense in what I'm actually reading. Because like on first view, so just looking at the first two that are on the front of the Appendix A, and we're looking at so the first one is about misalignment between LTP and the deliverables from that, and that's got a catastrophic consequence. The next one is looking capacity of organisation to deal with change, which is major. And I see the actual risks for the two of them are the same. So how is it then you've got to change, you've put the first one as being catastrophic as opposed to major? I'm just sort of getting more of an idea of how, as an example, on how the actual scoring and everything is with this register.
So because we're working off spreadsheets, it probably isn't as technical as it could be. However, what we try to do when we consider and we're looking at the inherent risk there, so any risk before we've got any controls in place. And I guess for the first one, that is the catastrophic, it probably covers more parts of the council in more serious ways, whereas the capacity of the organisation to deal with change, we already have people in place that can deal with change before we put controls in place. So it's just kind of balancing out those judgments to figure out which was the higher risk. That's
Okay, thank you.
Right, a few things from me. When it comes to risk management, you know I'm always going to have a few comments. This is great. It's great work, Sonia. So pleased to hear about operating effectiveness and design effectiveness of the control. So as Steve alluded to, you've kept, because when I first looked at the residual rating, again, first read it, kind of a few alarm bells, right? But explaining that you've taken a prudent approach to that measure is much more preferable as an Audit and Risk Committee chair than you being, you know, a little bit too confident and saying it's all fine without actually testing the controls or actually knowing the controls are in place, so that's fine. I did think maybe what you might be able to add in here once your risk appetite work is done is a target column. So then we know as a committee, you know, how comfortable are we at sitting overall as red, you know. Hopefully you're saying we're not comfortable and that the target is more high rather than extremes, and that can be linked obviously to your risk appetite work once it's done. What I don't want to happen, like this is wonderful to see the risk registers and their raw content, because it's given me I guess as a risk professional as opposed to a treasury professional, it's given me a great level of confidence that the quality of the process. Right, so just by reading how you've described the risk, how you've assessed both the inherent and residual in your controls and how they're worded, you know, it's a quality product. But I don't think every hui we need to be going through the risk registers, because as we started the hui, we don't know what the next 6 months are going to be like, but we could get bogged down in detail. So I'm wondering whether this is great as a first time to see that, to get the confidence, but this could potentially go into the library part of diligent, and maybe when you have time you might be able to work with Matt's team to kind of do a Power BI dashboard for the committee.
Yeah,
that
that's
can kind
exactly.
of lift this data. You might even think about whether the committee even needs to see, like Nicole's question around inherent, actually we just need to know the residual rating, right? So actually when you pull it into the Power BI, we just will need to know the risks and actually are they being controlled. So think about the content of what those Power BI dashboards might look like, just so that we're not getting dived into the
I think don't you want the committee to at least have a view on how you got to the residual, i.e. what we're accepting as you know, and that, I think you'd want to see that detail up until the point where it's all sort of kind of locked down and consented and council's kind of comfortable with it. Then at that point, dashboard reporting against how you're progressing is really important. But yeah.
And I think that can come across through your control effectiveness rating and what the controls are in place that that we believe are actually working. But maybe, and it's, once you have some time, have a look at what that dashboard is. I just don't want to get into a habit of, because I've seen this when I've chaired other committees, that you're suddenly going through Excel spreadsheets of 200 risks and you're not actually getting the quality. Risk appetite, great to see that we've gone down that path and started that journey. Now, this would have been very helpful for the conversation we had about 30 minutes ago around Treasury, right? Because if we understand what our risk appetite is, which is the first step, you know, that level of risk that we are willing to take as an organisation, the next two categories to understand as we move through that risk maturity process is capacity and tolerance. So if we understand what our risk capacity is in the financial space, and we had that defined, that 30-minute conversation probably could have been a 10-minute conversation, because we probably could have gone, well, yes, our risk appetite is not to breach our treasury policy and not to be outside our covenants, but actually our risk capacity allows us to, you know, we've got a tolerance. We can actually move a little bit outside it, which is kind of the conversation that Bruce doesn't want to put his name on it, but, you know, he was talking about capacity, I was talking about appetite. So we've actually had a really good corridor around risk appetite, capacity and tolerance. And that could all be in that covering note that goes to council, right? It'll be actually, yes, we're outside our risk appetite, but we're not outside our risk capacity. So, and it's not a real... Yeah.
I just said I think we've got to be careful as an audit and risk committee, and I may have been guilty of it, of assuming the appetite for the risk as well by having that discussion, right? Yeah. It may well be that others, that the council and councillors would have a completely different view on what it was.
Yeah. But that's where the difference between appetite and capacity is useful. It doesn't mean that the council are giving you, their blessing to step outside it, but it does mean that coming back to that kind of Power BI and the, I think when we talk about an individual risk and doing that bow tie analysis, so when we just pull one risk out, how we can kind of stretch that and just understand the root cause and what we're, but no, great work. We've come a long way, and good. Matt's are you going to talk to your...
So to extend... Pardon? I know, it's just...
It's good process.
It is. It's a process thing.
Yes, you need to, I would suggest that you put to the committee to formally extend, knowing that the agenda is running over time, and go for a 30-minute extension, knowing that you may not use all of that.
So...
That would be the limit of it, I think. Yeah, and probably I've been guilty of extending it, so...
Lessons learned, appetite updated. So moved. If you want to move the extra 30 minutes, let's keep moving.
Yeah, look, I can give just a very brief overview of where we're at with cyber, given it's on the list. Okay, so a year ago, we engaged with a cybersecurity partner. Went through a fairly standard review. You've probably seen it before, Annalise, all based against a NIST framework. We looked at our maturity ratings across all the subcomponents of that. and I'm pleased to report that we are lifting our maturity in the trajectory that we wish to be. I don't know if you remember, but I think I might have sat in front of this, or not this committee, but the in chambers probably about 9 months ago, and I said we have some time to get to the point we need to, because as we go through digital transformation and we start implementing more online digital systems, that'll be the pivot point where we have to have got better to a certain point. So we still have time, but at the moment we're on the right trajectory. Look, I'll just briefly run through just some areas and just tell me if it's too much detail, please. So as part of the maturity roadmap that we have the team actively working on, we're looking at our digital supply chain security. So that's our vendors, et cetera, et cetera. That'll proliferate across the organisation. We're looking across all our managed services, our incident and response planning, identity and access management, cyber incident simulation exercises. We're beginning those. Targeted cybersecurity training, and quite importantly, our IT and OT network, given that we have a whole lot of assets out there that are controlled by fairly old technology, which is pretty similar for all councils in this country. Yes, yeah, organisational tech. Sorry, IT information and OT is yeah. Sure you are, Bruce. Okay, so how does that actually roll down to rubber hitting the road? So on a monthly basis, we have a cybersecurity dashboard running. If you wish, I can forward this if you want, Annalisa, to have a look at the data that I'm talking about. So look, just for and it was a wrap up for the year, but for last month, we have between 1 or 0 and 10 what we call incidents. We'll have between 500 and about 200 security events. So events are stuff that the system picks up, but it is remediated immediately. Incidents are when things get through and we immediately remediate it. And then the third one would be a breach, which we've never had. So we're looking pretty good. So for last month, we had 9 security incidents. I can, just as a little bit of a tidbit, I can give you an example of an incident report. Just in the background, the stuff that the staff do not even see. So last month, we had 16,000 attempts at attacks through the internet, just in this month. We had nearly 7,000 spams that were just blocked at the perimeter. We had 2,500 phishing attempts that were blocked, didn't even get through. So this is just stuff that the process and the systems deal with. We also, from a Microsoft point of view, they have a global secure score. We're at 87%, which compares to similar organisations of 44. So we're punching above our weight. So I think we can be quite proud of that as an organisation. So rubber hitting the road. So I'll just give you 2 very brief examples. So we got a call from the NCSC, which is the front window for the GCSB, a couple of weeks ago. It was a global, what they call zero-day attack. My team, in conjunction with our partner, that provide what they call a SOC and a SIEM, which is like a big, I think of it as a big system that sits over the top, looks at all our systems, takes all the logs in, and can make an informed decision on if we're being attacked or not. Okay. So we got a call from the NCSC, which is quite concerning, but given the global effect it was a zero-day attack on a Microsoft system. We got a call at 8 o'clock. By 8:30, we had the incident team mobilisers on a Sunday night, right? Because we have out of our support and we have members of the digital team on call to work with our partners. By 8:30, I was alerted and by around about 10 o'clock that night, it was confirmed there was no attack. So within an hour and a half on a Sunday night, sorted. Now, another one we had the month before, this is very common, and this is probably your highest risk. I'll just pull up the incident report here. 28th of May, 11 o'clock, a staff member received a phishing email that contained a link. They downloaded the link, entered their credentials, password. Within 10 minutes, our systems detected it. It was removed from the network. That staff member was informed, and within an hour, it was confirmed no breach. So I think that's pretty good. Yep. We will never be able to stop the human effect. We're putting in places training, fake phishing, expeditions, things like that. People are humans. They're always going to click on it, right? So yes, I'm quite pleased to report that to this committee that in my view, where the risk is very well controlled. And look, we're getting better all the time. These unfortunately, the folks out there, the bad guys, are getting better as well, and we just have to keep up with the play on that. Does anyone have any questions?
Yes.
Shane?
Yeah, quickly. Thanks very much, Matt, with what you have done with what you've been allocated is incredible, mate. So I just wanted to share a kudos for you and the team. I just have one question around, as councillors, we're contractors, how carefully monitored the system currently is, and where work potentially could be better is understanding where information does go from our systems, and if there is a breach of information from say my laptop of what potentially is sensitive information, how easily recoverable is that, or how widely known is it that when using a device of council ownership that it is monitored?
Yes, Shane. So
Without being too pointed, I guess. Yeah.
So look, the probably the highest risk is when you folks go overseas. You go around and you walk into other cafes and use the Wi-Fi. I can look around the room here, and I won't point fingers at folks as well that have walked into these places, and they have been attempts at compromisation. Our systems are just as rapid when you're off remote as they are when you're in the building. So the saving grace from a technical point of view, there's two things. We have a thing called multi-factor authentication, and the other one is we have a thing called geofencing, right? That means we know when you are out of the country and when you're not, and we also know that it is you that is logged in because you have put in your username and password plus something else, right? So that's called multi-factor authentication. So thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Just one thing from me. So obviously we've got it in our risk register as a strategic risk number 15, cyber attack. Good to see the way the risk is worded is not around the occurrence of the risk happening, because it is happening every day, multiple times a day, but actually our ability to maintain data security, financial loss and reputational loss. Mm-hmm. So good explanations on the controls and the activity that your team is doing to mitigate that risk. We have decreased it from almost certain to possible. So I think Sonia's risk management framework, that's kind of almost 50-50. Well, so my high-level question is, what's your target rating for this risk, and how fast are we going to get there?
Sorry, so that's going from almost. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay. So it'll be another 12 months. I'd like to see it down to that. There's a whole, and I don't want to use a whole lot of technical terms in here, but we're hardening our network at this point in time. So the next risk is once we've stopped the dome, stop the stuff getting in, it's if it does get in, we had to basically harden the inside of our network, and that will be done in the next sort of 6 months as well. So that will stop that likelihood once it gets in again further. So 12 months. Yeah.
Legal update, and then we're almost there.
Good morning. For those, I think it might actually just be Bruce. For those that we haven't met, I'm Dim Newcombe, Senior Legal Counsel here at SDC. This is my colleague Sophie Mears, also Senior Legal Counsel. And in Julie's absence, we're here today to present to you the quarterly legal and policy report. We'll take the report as read and note that this follows the report that we've provided previously. The takeaways are engagement continues to increase. We have seen significant matters from the team being both water and Upper Selwyn huts, and we've updated our reporting template, picking up on the feedback from last quarter's ARC, noting where we're actually committing our time against our prioritisation matrix. And what we're seeing is that we are spending more of our time on each of the critical and high matters than we are on any of those green ones. So we've had a few legislative changes sort of starting to rear some attention in our space. The first one is an RMA change which our planning team are working through. These are at the moment in bill stage, so the legislation isn't yet in force. The other key piece of legislation that's looking and working its way through the system at the moment is the Systems Improvement Bill. That's an amendment to our Local Government Act. It's intended to refocus councils on cost-effective delivery of core services. It's largely a revision to the 2017 position, but the preamble, we do want to note, contemplates further controls on local government spend in the form of a rates cap, though at this moment we're unclear when this will come and what it will look like, and we'll continue to monitor progress of that in due course. We also having some really good success with the Ombudsman at the moment, so those historical complaints, our trend is continuing in how those are being assessed by the Ombudsman. And in the last quarter, those complaints have either resulted in a finding of the Ombudsman that we acted reasonably in our responses to Lagoimas, or staff have been able to address any outstanding issues directly with complainants. So that's happy days. And then look, our policy review program is progressing. We've got a reduction in overall policies and a few that we'll be prioritising in the next little while to help bring up to speed. And our policy management tool is now live, which means the policies are accessible for staff, and we've provided training on that front as well. I'm now going to hand over to Sophie on Lagoima. We know it's a bit of a hot topic, so Sophie's got some stats.
Yeah, just a couple of points. So you'll see the data's in the report there, but we're seeing that the trend of an increasing number of Lagoimas is continuing. And just to put it into stark relief, we've got a 75% increase on the last financial year. So that's we've got 343 in the last financial year, and the year before that it was 195. So it's really ramping up. And tying into the comment that was made by one of the committee members earlier, comparing to the 2022 elections and the lead up to those elections, there was sort of an average between 5 and 10 Lagoimas per month. Last month in July, we received 56 Lagoimas. So I think that we can expect that to continue over the coming months. So I've got other data, but I think it's probably better that I respond to questions about Lagoimas rather than just give you facts. So.
Questions, comments? Nicole?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, just probably for Matt, Madam Chair. Oh, whoever else was first.
Shane, you go. Carry on.
Yeah, it's just thanks very much, team. It's quite satisfying to receive the letter from the Ombudsman confirming that the council are acting fairly. And just sort of reading through the letter there, also seems to me that the tone of the letter is there's a gateway there as to what is serious and what is worth, or maybe not worth isn't the right term to use, but what is a good use of time and some of the requests that are coming through Lagoima. And that certainly seems to be expressed through the Ombudsman as to what is material, what is worth the investment in time, considering that there's a large investment in time. So I'm pleased with the progress on that point. Thank you.
Nicole?
Yeah, I echo Shane's comments regarding Lagoimas and what the Ombudsman came back with. I'm just not clear. So with extending timeframes, what is involved with that, and how can you actually get that? I just don't quite, because I mean, there's obviously strict time frames that you guys have to work to, and what the process is for extending that.
So the time frame is 20 working days, and we're allowed to extend it just by informing the requester that we need an extension, but we need to provide a reason for that. Usually it is situations where there's been substantial collation required and staff just haven't had the capacity to do it. So we would usually advise the requester as soon as possible that we need that extension. Sometimes it can be later on when we realise that the request is bigger than we thought, but it's essentially just advising the requester.
Cool, thank you. And just good to see with the policy review program. Just one thing that's been a little bit of a bugbear for me is, and I assume it comes under with you guys, is the report templates that we get for our council meetings. There seems to be a few different variations that come through, which of course means there's different. It's more around sort of the back of the report where we're looking at so views of those affected, Marion Treaty implications, and sort of resilience and sustainability. And also, I see with your one, it's got looking at future Selwyn and stuff like that. Just more to get a consistency across our reports that we're getting the same, that sort of information the same as well.
Yeah, if I respond to that, and there's a couple of points too, just to add a bit more clarification. But yeah, that is a bit of work we're doing with our team, is to make sure that they access the right templates. So we've updated them based on the work with this council. And but sometimes someone's done an amazing piece of work 12 months ago and they go to that instead of the right template. So there's a little bit of work we've got to do there for our teams. Look, at just a bit of context around the letter from the Ombudsman. That was a letter that was sent to all councils in the country. It wasn't just specific to Selwyn. But you'll note the biggest risk in there is it's around delays of response. And we're focusing on risk, but the team have managed to get what was our traditional response maybe 12 months ago of around 23.5 to 24 days. It's now down to 14. So, that's a really big success for everyone. It's not just the legal team too, because the responses have to be signed off by the execs. And some of the information our teams are having to pull together is quite considerable. So it involves digital, our informations records team, our operational teams to provide the sense check on it, so that it is a massive team effort. So I think we can be confident now we're managing that risk, and in the context of the significant increase in Lagoimas we're receiving too.
And on the back of that is the actual staff time to respond to all of that, and meaning the level of staff then is involved on having to respond to any of these things, which is not a small amount. So thank you.
I will make a comment in response to that. So you'll see that we've noted the plan to proactively publish some Lagoima responses and moving to a space where we have more information available online. So then when we get a request in that we've already got that information available, we can just simply refer to it without actually having to go to the operational teams to save that staff time. So that will be a key project there.
I don't have anything further to add on that, but yeah, just thank the team on making that progress. Because although we've got, a faster cadence of getting the requests out the door, the actual demand is going up considerably, and that's what I've seen on other councils as well. But I guess the good news is that, at least our monitor, our regulator is seeming to have a pragmatic approach to our response, which seems to be at all councils. So, yeah, it's definitely getting harder, and I guess, Sharon, you'll be mindful of that with the team and the fact that they've got enough.
Madam Chair, I was just going to say you've got 12 minutes left and you've still got public excluded in a paper. You may find yourself at risk of having to extend the meeting again. So I just wanted to alert you that you've got 12 minutes of your extension left.
So move this report.
Yep. Thanks, Shane. Seconder. Thanks, Bruce. All those in favour?
Aye.
Commercial report.
Happy to move. Oh, sorry. Yep.
Kia ora. So you'll remember that back in February last year, we first brought a report to you about doing some condition inspections on council buildings. That work has been undertaken over the past year, and Andy Tyre, sitting here beside me, is the man who has done the inspection work. And you've got the reports attached to, for all the individual buildings attached to the main report here. So I'll hand over to Andy shortly to talk through the key findings of that work that was undertaken. Unfortunately, we were expecting to have Gareth Morgan with us to answer any questions that fell out of it about what's happening in terms of how council are addressing those things moving forward. He unfortunately has been called away to other things, and I understand Tim Mason's also at a funeral. So I'd recommend that any questions about what council's doing now and in the future perhaps be taken or noted down, and they can be responded to by that team separately. Over to you, Andy.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks very much for having us. As Vanessa has pointed out earlier, I was asked to undertake maintenance or visual inspections on 13 council buildings around the district. They are listed in the report. The observations and common themes that came out of those reports have been summarised into 5 key points within the report supplied to you. I'll run through those if you don't mind. The first key observation was building maintenance. It seems to be that within some of the designs of the buildings, the ongoing maintenance of the building hasn't really been taken into account, and whether the cost of that maintenance hasn't been taken into account as part of the initial costings of the building. That's the ongoing maintenance requirements on those buildings. And there didn't seem to be on a number of buildings a standard maintenance plan in place where everybody who was involved in the building, from the people operating the building to the council team managing those buildings, were aware of who was required to undertake maintenance on those buildings. Item 2 is around material selection. We just found that on a number of buildings, the materials that were chosen for inclusion on the buildings, some of those materials do take quite a lot of maintenance to allow that building to perform well during its lifetime, and maybe some of the selections of materials could be improved in future builds for Selwyn District Council. Item 3 is around the procurement process. Obviously, the reason for this report, I do believe, came out of the issues that have been encountered at Green Park. The procurement process on that building was not adequate to supply council with a suitable building. But I do understand, and looking at the 13 buildings that I've inspected, the procurement process seems to be well improved from, I think that building was 2014 compared to some of the procurement of the later building stock within the Selwyn District Council, such as the sports hub and the health hub across the road here. I did get feedback from a number of people working within the buildings around item 4, which is operational input and design, whether in that initial design process it would be beneficial to involve the people running the buildings into some of the design of that building, especially around storage areas. Had in several buildings where plant rooms were full of sports equipment, and there's examples like out at West Melton Community Hub where there's changing rooms and toilet facilities that are full of sports equipment because there hasn't been enough storage allowed into the building itself. Down at the swimming pool, the Selwyn Aquatic Centre, the feedback from the people operating that building was that they would have loved to have some input into the design of the plant within the building due to some of the issues they're having now with the ongoing maintenance and upgrading of the plant. Final point was the third-party verification. Generally, it was found that the third-party certification functions performed by Selwyn District Council were adequate. There is a continual improvement process going on within the building control team to ensure that the certification is correctly endorsed at the prior to issuing a building consent and prior to issue of the code of compliance. There were some findings that improvements could be made, but the third-party verification didn't seem to be a key point in some of the shortcomings of the buildings.
Sorry, Andy, can I just interrupt you just for a moment?
Absolutely.
Just for clarity,
Yep.
The full meeting I understand is a 3-hour meeting for Audit and Risk Committee. I think because you think it's, but I wasn't aware of the ruling around a break after 2 hours. So I think we're almost there. So if I can, and I don't want to cut Andy's short because obviously management have put a lot of effort into this paper. So if we're all comfortable, are we comfortable to go for another 10 minutes to conclude the public part of this meeting, take a break and then move into PX?
Yep.
Because in my calendar, this hui is a 3-hour meeting.
Yep.
Right?
Yes.
That's fine, no problem at all. To be fair, that does summarise the 5 key observation and common themes. Are there any questions? Is there any feedback that people would like to ask me about?
I was first.
Yes.
Nicole's going first, I think, Shane.
Fantastic.
Yes, that's correct.
Thanks for that. I read through all of those reports with interest.
Oh, well done.
Yeah, it was a lot of reading, but it was very good to see how much detail you've gone into with your inspections and everything like that. I have actually been involved with the Sports Centre and Te Ara Aotea sort of on the committees for those,
right,
and so I have a personal interest
yeah.
in some of what you've put. And I mean, a number of that comes down to the way that the buildings, they're all individually done for each project.
Yes.
And I understand from what Sharon has said to us a while back is that they're looking to do more sort of standardised designs, and I think that some of what you've found with with each of those buildings. I mean, obviously, with other buildings that are coming up will be different in that regard. And I assume that starting with Fota Row, which is like the next one that is being built. You brought up about the sports equipment being stored in some parts of the building, and I know. Sorry, I'm not asking a question. I'm just clarifying on some of the things, because I know of some of the discussions that were had, particularly with like the sports centre itself, and it's it's actually difficult to try and, from my understanding, to put space aside for sports equipment and stuff like that when you are looking at the whole cost of a building and having that sort of spaces included. When it's not directly related to being the operation of the building itself. So this is where the whole swings and roundabouts, and trying to get cost-effective building for our community, but also being able to make sure that it's workable for the people that are using it. But I just wanted to reiterate, so thank you very much for that. And I assume that all your findings that you have come up with will be taken on board, and then, you know, really something to start from when we're looking with the next one.
Yeah, absolutely, and you're 100% correct there. Like the Selwyn Sports Hub, that was driven by. Sorry, it was a long time since I was there. There was a key driver on that project. Was it
John Reid?
Yes, that's right. And the feedback I got from the guys that were running that facility was John was adamant that storage had to be suitable in that building, and it is. It's fantastic. The storage I've got down there is fantastic. But yes, you're dead right. I'm a quantity surveyor by trade, so I've been involved in design build projects throughout my working life, and it's what we call value engineering. Okay, so if we design a building, okay, it comes in over budget. What are the easy things to pull out of it? And storage is number one.
Yep.
So that looks to me like what's happened through a number of these projects, and it's like, and it's, you're dead right. It's a very, very fine balancing act, but that's where what I've got around here around that procurement process. It's having a good design team on board to allow to ensure the building remains functional, because you've got down at the Lincoln Event Centre. I think there's a storage shed that's built about 400 metres away from the building. The team are backwards and forwards, bringing gear in and out of the building, which is throughout the life of the building, the time of staff having to move furniture around the building is probably not economical.
And
So-
I also read about a second floor storage that wasn't used that much anyway, because it's difficult to access and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So really good, and a whole lot of takeaways, and I totally commend. Thank you for that report.
Oh, pleasure, no problem.
Shane?
Thanks very much, Andy. I really appreciated the report as well, and Nicole pointed that out. Assuming that a lot of that work will then feed into the investment divestment strategy. You've pointed out a couple of key wins for council in terms of projects, one being the health hub, second being Foster Park. In your opinion, Nicole's raised it, Whataroa is the next capital build for council. Following the success of both of those developments would be the obvious choice moving forward for any capital expenditure moving forward for a council facility, would it not? And as you pointed out, a key driver of the success is often needed. So I hope that will be you, mate. You've certainly got the experience. You know the buildings intimately now and what is a success. So long may your work continue. But just going back to your work, the obvious choice for any further development would be to follow the success of the previous. Would that be true?
Yeah, certainly. So, sorry, Whataroa, what's it?
Whataroa is the next facility that'll be built out at Leaston.
Oh, okay, the replacement library.
I think it's a bit unfair to ask you that, Andy. It was a bit cheeky of Shane to preempt what might come through a capital asset plan, but I think what he was alluding to is that best practice would be to follow what you found to be best practice.
Yeah.
Rather than trying to set the agenda through this meeting.
Yeah. And I guess one thing just
The
to
last
make
one, mate.
you aware of.
I know. Go for it, Shane.
one thing to be aware of is in the building team, Andy and I have got our regulatory hats on, and we've got to stick to that part of our responsibility. These projects are being delivered through infrastructure and property, and we meet regularly throughout those projects to try and give good advice and steer them in the right direction if we feel they're going off astray, but it's not all on us.
Sam, you had a question?
Yeah, my question's for Sharon. As a follow-up from this report, how do we ensure that with Whātaro and future builds, the community desire for the bits of the building they want to be important to them matches, or can be brought alongside the operational usability, which includes with the storage conversation, but actually just making use of the space is a key part of it as well. And this, so it comes right back around to what Bruce talked about earlier in the meeting, is around community feedback and concern to council about, we spend a lot of time talking to our community about what you want, but then we've actually got to be able to use and deliver what we build. And so Whātaro at the moment's in that tricky space of communities giving us a lot of feedback, and now we have to come up with something that's actually operationally usable. Can you just talk how do we balance that, and as a committee, how do we ensure that when council makes decisions on this, we take into account this report, because not all councillors are here to understand and hear that today.
Yep, thank you, Sam. What I would say, there's a couple of different points here. As Vanessa quite rightly said, that this isn't just on the building team, this is across infrastructure. So what we have is an integrated approach. And if I use Whātaro as an example, there has been an integrated approach taken with regards to the community advisory group, community services and infrastructure. And that is basically the project approach that we will take going forward, and that continued relationship in with the building consents team. So we have a very clear pathway. And of course, with every project, there is always a natural tension around what is designed versus what has to be operable. And that's part of the integrated approach that we take as we've set these projects up, the relationship between the community advisory group and the teams to how can we best bring it to life, but we also have a responsibility to make sure that it's operable and value for money. And that's currently what our project team for Whātaro are doing with the community advisory group. And for any other bills that feature going forward, I would like to think that we will be taking that similar approach. And in terms of when it comes to the next long-term plan, from the last long-term plan, councillors asked staff to develop a criteria around future bills, etc. And that criteria will be coming back now, probably to the new council, which also provides some guidelines around, what falls within council's purview to build or not to build, and particularly with some of the changing legislation as well.
Thank you, and thanks, Andy, for the report. I did read through it, and as Nicole said, I found it quite interesting in reading the detail. I did, however, when I lifted it, go, why are we seeing this at an audit and risk committee? So it's probably just tying it back to our terms of reference, our annual work program. There's risk, there's definitely risk in there, but understanding whether this is going to be a cyclical process and where it best sits. I think for me, your appendix, your summary of findings, that gives a level of confidence that there is a process. It's a very well managed process. I mean, your template structure per building was consistent. It was really, really good quality in the writing, but I just wasn't sure whether this is the best place, or this is the best committee to be able to be going into the detail. I definitely want to understand the process. I want to understand you're doing it. I'm interested to hear what Sonia's view on whether this is operating at kind of second line or third line of defence, in that assurance. So when you're wearing your hat, Andy, we're relying on you're an actual independent voice. But if this was to become a cyclical reporting, it's probably can be lifted and maybe it's your summary page, or whether it best sits in full council to get into the detail
I
of the
think,
buildings.
Chair, from a curiosity perspective, I know that we did ask the question. You take great comfort from the fact that there is a detailed process that goes on, and this has informed that. I don't think we need to make it an annual cycle of this, but we just need to make sure that, because this is informative in terms of how you develop your asset management plan, your long-term plan, and it tells you as well things would go well, things that didn't go well, what we're going to fix, what we're not going to fix. It all is, at least it's systematic and it's not ad hoc. And so I'm really comfortable that that's happened, and also it's identified the risk. But to see it again and again wouldn't be a good use of our time.
No. The other thing I was thinking about is how does this link into kind of our PIR process, so our post-investment review process, which may, Shane, have shifted to the Finance and Performance Committee. But remember a few years ago when we post-capital project and post-completing of a new build, we established a post-investment review framework to review our investment to, did the build run on time, cost, quality, but also after a period of 6 to 12 months, have we realised the benefits of the business case, or the benefits that were recognised in the business case? So some of what you were doing is almost overlapping with that PIR process, but as I say, great comfort in the, especially in that kind of health and safety and maintenance and costs. Yeah.
Right.
Sharon?
Thank you. Just a quick reminder. So council actually asked for Audit and Risk to look at this some time ago related to Green Park Hall. And so I see that this is a really good function that council directly requested Risk and Audit to look at the state of our facilities following a concern that was raised about Green Park Hall. So this is actually just closing the loop in terms of the report has been back to Audit and Risk. That is providing a level of satisfaction, and then that will go back to council, saying that, and I guess what I would say is that it would be really handy as that there is a resolution perhaps that from Audit and Risk, given that council actually asked Audit and Risk to look at this in the first instance, and that you are satisfied with the report that has been completed, and then we will close the final loop as this is then brought back to council to say you have undertaken this and you are satisfied.
Receiving the report and recommending it to council.
Thank you. Thank you for turning off. Can I just say, rather than receive the report, I am advising that it would be really handy to have a resolution that Audit and Risk have accepted the report and is satisfied with the process that has been undertaken to review the building facilities as requested by council, and the report can now go back to council to close the loop, or words to that effect. I'm sure somebody will wordsmith that far better than I have.
I don't know who's got their light on, but I'm happy with that. As long as by closing the loop, that means that it then adds, this report then adds to the next part of our strategy, which is either investment, divestment, or best practices, or whatever it might be, rather than just receiving it for information. It's actually useful once then we've accepted it, that it does feed into information requested to continue the development of.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just looking at the recommendation you're asking us to adopt. Sharon, can you please restate your proposed recommendation so the team can write it down and maybe just go a slight smidgen slower?
Thank you, Steve. I cannot remember for the life of me what I said, so I'll have another crack. That Audit and Risk Committee accept and I'd put the title of the report. That the Audit and Risk Committee confirm back to council that they are satisfied, for the want of a better word, assessment that has been completed by management. As requested, and I would ask somebody to find the detail in the report. We'll have to go back and look in the previous minutes when council asked risk and audit, and just we'll reference that time frame.
Right, so if someone moves that the Audit and Risk Committee accepts the Council Building Condition Risk and Inspection Programme report and confirm back to Council of the assessment that has been completed by management as requested, per the detail in the report. Thank you, Bruce. Second by Nicole. All those in favour? Right. I'll have someone move us into public excluded, please. Thank you, Nicole. Seconder. Bruce, all those in favour? Right. 10-minute break, and then we have one item.
Have we moved? Are we in public? Did I just say all of that in?
You seconded it,
thanks.
Shane.
Roger. Okay. Karakia, is it?
Yeah.
Karakia whakamutunga. Unuhia, unuhia. Te pau, te pau.
Kia
Wātea,